Welcome in, good people. Hopefully, you are doing super duper well today. It is your humblest of hosts, Soul Expression. Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to the channels, the Ufuluchild and the Inner Storyteller YouTube channels. Very happy that you're here. While you're here, please do me a quick favor and like the video and subscribe. Of course, I only need you to do so because it's like written in the Bible that thou shalt like the video and thou shalt subscribe. It's somewhere in the back. You'll find it. Put it in AI. AI will tell you. Please like the video because I have this ambition to one day monetize this podcast, and I cannot do so if you don't help push the video out to the algorithm. If you are here, okay, if you want to know about the Inner Storyteller, then you are here for real conversations, good people. And we speak about natural law. We speak about religion. We speak about money, anarchy, culture, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. And we speak about how mankind is manipulated from the shadows by forces that do not have our best interests at heart because they are completely evil. Now, I say we talk about religion. We are not bashing faith systems here. Okay, we are not taking part in the bashing or shaming of people that have a religion. Human beings must orient themselves toward belief. We are simply examining the psychological effects of the stories, that we have the most faith in, the stories that we have the most stake in. They have lasting effect. We are examining those effects, how those stories help shape society, right? And that examination happens to sit right alongside a honest look at the current human condition, which is, of course, slavery. Government is slavery. And the question that we have to keep coming back to is what could actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works? Now, if any of that makes you a little uneasy, makes you a little angry or uncomfortable in any way, please be assured, rest assured, although you are 100,000% encouraged to stay, you are also, of course, welcome to leave after you like the video. And with that being said, I'm actually going to turn off this virtual background because I'm going to share my screen. Oh, the door is open. Oh, no. Oh, no. Presentation. There we go. And then I need to actually, wrong one. Bring the presentation back to the first slide. You know what I'm saying? Because we got big things to talk about. We got big things to talk about today. Outpaced is the title of today's video as well as today's presentation. And I'm talking about how we are outpaced in our development, in our advancement, in comparison to the pace of how fast technology is advancing. And I'm going to close this door, so give me 2 seconds. Trust me, good people. What lies beyond that door is none of your concern. Okay. Jokes aside, aside, let's get into Outpaced. Let me ask you something before we get into anything else, before we truly begin. When you think about human advancement, what do you picture? You see, because most people picture technologies, a new phone, faster processor, some sort of medical breakthrough, an AI that can hold a conversation that you can't pick up on AI patterns, sounds more organic. And that picture, of course, would make sense. Say the word advancement, you think of what you can see advancing very rapidly in your own lifetime. Because we have been, unfortunately, fed a story that says that those things are indeed us advancing. That the tool is an extension of us. And therefore, when the tool gets smarter, we get smarter. When the tool gets faster, we get faster. And this story is false. It's big false. Okay, good people. Here's what's actually true. There are two kinds of advancement. Count them, 1, 2. And they do not move at the same speed. Technological advancement, okay, is very fast, exponentially fast, right? In the 1440s, you get the printing press, and this changed the entire world. The Industrial Revolution, followed about 400 years later, just about. And then we get widespread use of electricity. Very shortly after widespread use of electricity, we get the telephone. The telephone also completely changed everything and was a big leap in technological advancement. It connected people from far, far distances in a way that hadn't been done outside of maybe telepathy beforehand. After the telephone, very shortly, we get the radio. We get television. We get the internet, the interwebs, as I like to call them. Very shortly after that, we get the smartphones, right? Today, we have all of the advancements of what we call artificial intelligence. Of course, it's more so complicated language learning and very, very fast, very involved and complicated data regurgitation, if you will. It's not actually intelligence. But it seems so, and so we call it artificial intelligence. But it's not like a consciousness has awakened within the machines that we know of just yet in the mainstream. Like in the 99%, we don't know. Okay. Now, all of that, okay, from electricity all the way through AI, it's roughly 150 years. That's exponential growth, good people. 1440s, we get the printing press. The printing press is not electrical. Printing press is what allows people to print books, to print, a whole lot of writing, written material, and mass distribute it across the entire world. 1440s, right? 1760s, the Industrial Revolution kicked things into high gear, and by the 1880s, we were looking at a completely different world. In technological advancement, we were looking at the future. But in human moral and human holistic advancement, we were stuck right where we are. Therefore, now when we take a look at human advancement, we are looking at the past. We are looking at exactly where we were in the 1440s. Human advancement moves a lot differently. And human advancement in this presentation, in my work on this channel, means advancement in spiritual alignment with truth, where your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions are more and more coherent, and your coherent thoughts, actions, and emotions, and actions are in more and more alignment with truth, okay, with what is. Advancement in moral clarity, advancement in our ability to choose right action, advancement in our capacity to think, discern, govern ourselves, and live in genuine community with one another. That is holistic human advancement in this presentation. And that kind of advancement, good people, unfortunately does not come from a software update. It does not come from a quick tweak of digital symbols, right, within the format of a program. It comes from slow, difficult, often, unglamorous, right, unrewarded, unsung work, right? You have to do the work to advance spiritually. You have to know yourself through and through. You have to know what you don't know to a certain degree, and many other things like that. In order to do the work, we have to repeatedly take right action, right? Right choice making over and over and over again. Practicing the knowledge that we gain as we try to make the right choices. Embodying more and more of the truth and not regressing to embodying more and more of the lie when it becomes more comfortable to do so, to the best of our ability. You know, unfortunately, what we see when we look around is quite the opposite. We see consistently repeated wrong choice making. We see rhetorical knowledge where somebody may be able to recite wisdom but doesn't live it. And embodied lies, obedience to corrupt and evil and coercive systems in the name of freedom. That's lies. So these two timelines, human advancement, technological advancement, they are not synchronized, and they never have been. Right? And the gap between them is where most self-imposed human suffering lives and comes from. So, let's talk about game theory just a little bit. Robert Axelrod spent years running game theory experiments, digital simulations, to understand when and why human cooperation emerges. His most famous finding came from a computer tournament where hundreds of strategies competed in a repeated prisoner's dilemma. Okay? The prisoner's dilemma is the scenario where two players must choose cooperation or defection without knowing what the other will do. Now, the consistent winner of the prisoner's dilemma was the simplest strategy in the tournament. First, you cooperate. First, if you're going to win, you're going to first choose to cooperate. Then you just mirror whatever the other player does. Okay? You have to be willing to forgive and return to cooperation after defection. And you have to not be exploitable while also not being permanently hostile. Just cooperate and then mirror what the other player does. That was the strategy he found that the winners in the simulations were using. What Axelrod found is that cooperation is not idealistic. Cooperation does not come from a naturally inherited or an inherent sense of altruism. In fact, cooperation is the dominant rational strategy, but only under specific conditions. And those conditions are repeated interaction, mutual accountability, and consequences that are felt by the person making the decision. Let me make sure I'm not going slower in the, okay, cool. In the presentation. Brian Skirms took this same approach to learning about human cooperation a little bit further. And he came up with a stag hunt scenario, which describes two hunters. Okay, the stag hunt scenario describes two hunters who will either cooperate with each other to hunt a stag, which feeds the whole community. And sorry, 1 second. I know you guys can hear the typing. A stag is a male deer. I had to refamiliarize myself with what a stag was. So they can either cooperate and catch the stag, which feeds more people at once, or they can not cooperate and each just catch one rabbit alone without help. Now, the thing about catching the stag is the stag requires trust. That mission requires trust. The rabbit guarantees a smaller but certain return because you're working by and for yourself. The stag does not guarantee anything because you're working with someone else and there's too many variables. Skirms argues that human moral development is essentially just the story of learning to choose the stag more consistently, to choose the mission that requires trust in others more consistently. And I would even add choosing it better, okay? Because you can't cooperate with everybody. We know that. And more consistently. So it may be a story, human moral development, may be a story of developing the trust, the coordination, the shared story required to pursue larger collective good results over smaller individual certainty. And here is where this connects directly to what we're talking about. Industrial capitalism, as an ideological technology, systematically removes the conditions under which cooperation naturally evolves. It replaces repeated relationship with one-time transactions. Okay? Industrial capitalism replaces repeated relationship with one-time transaction. It removes mutual accountability by making the scale anonymous. And it delays consequence through debt and credit systems that insulate the decision maker from the outcome of their decisions, meaning insulates them from the outcome, how it affects everybody else, because there's so much accounting and so much regulation in between. So the game gets redirected so that the moral development the game would naturally produce never really arrives. And the story told about the system is that it is the most advanced expression of human economic organization. Okay? It isn't. All right? The rabbit hunting philosophy dressed in the stag hunting civilization is still the rabbit hunting philosophy. When you make people have when you feed people separatist and divided worldviews, isolation worldviews, and you put them in a civilization that has the bells and whistles of a cooperative setup, a republic, if you will, that the illusory perception of cooperation does not erase the separatist and divide and conquer worldview of the people. Okay? Yeah, so as we can see, capitalism is a rabbit hunting philosophy dressed as a stag hunting civilization. Boom. Now, let's talk about somebody named J. Mackenzie Alexander, who identified the deeper structural problem. His work on the evolution of morality shows, with beyond the shadow of most doubts, that moral norms are not imposed from the outside. Instead, they emerge from human beings playing repeated games with each other across generations. Okay? Embodying the truth by playing repeated games across generations and experiencing the results helps evolve human beings' moral I was going to say state, but moral level, right? The structure that can survive. Sorry, the structures that can survive are the ones that produce stable cooperation consistently. But when the game changes faster than the moral norms that govern it, when technology, ideology, or economic structures shift rapidly before the moral development required to steward such shifts catch up within the holistic human being, the population becomes not only vulnerable to people smart enough to see that pattern, but also you may conclude that that's what causes a lot of our self-imposed suffering. Because, pardon me, because when technology, ideology, economic structures, and other world, altering, world shaping aspects of the dynamic human interactions on this planet are not moving alongside more morally right choices, then the morally wrong choices become attached to those who set the rules, the ruling class, in control of the technology the ideology and or economic structure in question. And this is exactly our situation, good people. We are outpaced by technology. We are not outpaced merely in intelligence, of course. We are not outpaced in creativity by a long shot. But we are outpaced morally, in a sense. The tools arrived before we developed the inner architecture required to use those tools toward genuine human flourishing. And rather than acknowledging that gap, honestly, and choosing to either put down or do away with the technologies until we do the work, we told ourselves a story that the tools arriving was evidence that we had arrived, right? The tools arriving at a more advanced state was taken as evidence that we, humanity, have arrived at a more advanced state when we were still in the exact same place. Boom. Okay. Like to make sure, I'm sorry for the long pauses in sound. I just like to make sure that I'm on pace with my presentation. You know, when I have a lot less time to prepare, sometimes things run together a little bit. But here's the thing. There's a researcher named Dennis Krebs, and his research makes these points even more precise. Okay, he finds that humans inherit biological dispositions toward the first three stages of moral development. Moral development's first three stages are basic reciprocity. If you do something, or if you are a certain way with somebody, then reciprocity means they make it known to you through their actions that they want to return some of what you're giving them. Basic reciprocity. Rule following. Okay. Anarchy does not mean no rules. It means no rulers. So following sound and moral rules. And social conformity. Compromising, not on your morals, not on your ethics, but compromising, right? Some things may be inconvenient, but good for all of you, and therefore you compromise. Social conformity. Those are the first three stages, of moral development in Krebs' research and in a lot of people's research. But here's the thing. That's just the first three. The higher stages, the ones involving principled universal ethics, okay, genuine self-governance and alignment with what on this channel we call natural law, those have to be developed with work. Okay, we do not inherit biologically the higher stages of moral development. We have to work in order to reach those and embody those and have those actually become a part of who we are. And to do so, it's slow. It doesn't happen the first time you sort of get it and then you start to move and act in a new way, in a way that's more aligned with it. It doesn't just happen overnight that now you're changed, right? These changes require the slow work of lived practice over and over and over again. Now, I think we go to the next slide. Nice. Here's the thing, good people. The order giver class, the 1%, they understood this gap thousands of years ago. They did not create it. It was already here. But they did identify it. By now, they did measure it. And they built systems designed to keep it exactly where it is in the human story, right? We have propaganda technologies. We have economic ideology as a tool for dividing people, keeping a freedom differential between those who have a lot of economic power and those who have little to no economic power. Educational systems specifically designed to produce compliant workers and soldiers who don't question authority, rather than human development in any sense, any real sense. All of these technologies are aimed at one thing, which is keeping the gap between the technological advancement and the holistic human advancement wide enough that the population remains manageable. Because when we know our rights, when we know our inherent freedoms, and when we know the difference between what it looks like to live in alignment with truth and what it looks like to live how we live today, we become less manageable by a ruling class, because we recognize that the members of the so-called ruling class are our peers. They are no different, no smarter, and no more worthy of power than you. So let's look at what we have produced with the gap remaining in place. How many religions are there? And of the largest ones, how many variations are there? Let's just take the big four, right? Between Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and Hinduism. How many variations within those four religions exist? Thousands of denominations, all pointing to the same concept, given the name God or Allah or whatever, given the name, the highest name in their holy terminology glossary, right? Thousands of denominations, all pointing to the same figurehead, fragmenting the same spiritual impulse into what amounts to competing competing factions that war with each other, sometimes bloody war. And they war with each other over doctrinal differences, while the foundational questions largely remain unexamined. How many economic systems exist? We have capitalism and its many subcategories. We have socialism and its many subcategories. Hundreds, at least, hundreds of ideological variations regarding the economic structure of a given region of the world that we call a nation, all attempting to solve the same small set of human problems like hunger, shelter, safety, efficiency, convenience. The same small set of problems, hundreds, if not thousands, of ideological variations. Of course, my implication is given to us by the ruling class. Okay, all of our ways of thinking about how an economic structure should be in a nation, they're all given to us. We learn about the names of them in school, and we can go down those rabbit holes, and all of the information is already curated by those who knew these searches and these arguments and debates were coming. Right? So the fragmentation creates the illusion of genuine difference and genuine choice, while the underlying questions are identical and the underlying problems largely remain unsolved. We did not solve with capitalism, socialism, all of their in-betweens and all of their overlaps, hunger, shelter, safety for all. And we didn't get closer to it with the technological advancement. You know, there were times where it looked like the graph was getting closer, but if you zoom out, you zoom the graph all the way, zoom out all the way from the graph, you see that those are just dips in a line that's relatively going in the same one direction. And this is not a coincidence, because fragmentation serves the story that they need us to tell ourselves, the story that they need our inner storyteller to program as true into our behavior. If you can get into our behavior, didn't sound right to me. Anyway, I'm not going to self-edit too much. If you can get people to fight over which version of the solution is correct, which approach to the solution is correct, and you can get them to believe that all other approaches to the solution are incorrect, then they will never examine whether the framework producing all of the versions of the solution might actually be the underlying problem. They'll be too busy fighting each other. Our lack of genuine community is not an effect of our lack of information, of a lack of information, pardon me. Our lack of genuine community is not an effect of a lack of information. It is not an effect of a lack of problem awareness. We know exactly what the problem is. Hunger, shelter. I named it earlier. Wait a minute. I want to see what it is. It was hunger, shelter, safety. Right? People know that there are problems and what the problems are. People know that there is suffering and injustice surrounding the basic problems of hunger, shelter, safety. The information is not only available, but also so commonplace that you can ask 5 and 6 year olds basic 5 and 6 year old level questions about these problems, and they will give you their opinion on them. Okay, so the awareness exists. Our lack of community is an effect of the stories that we tell ourselves. Stories about who belongs and who doesn't, about which solution is legitimate and which is dangerous, about which sources of information are legitimate and which are dangerous, about what connection looks like, stories about which forms of connection are safe to pursue and which are not. And we have been conditioned to associate connection with various forms of isolation and separatism. Okay? We associate connection with isolation and separatism. Right? First, we have religious identity. And this time when I use the word religion, I'm generally talking about the established, institutionalized religions. Well, your identity as a Muslim is not automatically on its face separatist and isolationist, but there, alongside the rest of the factors that come with religious identity, morphs and forms your identity as a Muslim or as a Jew or as a Christian or as a Hindu or as a Mormon or as a whatever, right? Morphs and twists that I call myself this into And if you call yourself something else, you don't really sit at the table with me. Like you can come sit at the table physically, but you don't really sit at the table with me. I'm disconnected from you in some way because of my religious identity, right? Same exact thing when it comes to, at least here in America, left versus right political stances, left versus right political occupations. Are you working on campaigns, or you literally work for the government in some form, way, shape, or form, and you have your political identity? Are you on the left? Are you on the right? Are you independent? Whatever that means, right? And national identity, racial identity. All of these categories are technologies. And again, technological advancement moves faster than human moral development. All of these technologies are for maintaining the experience of separation in beings whose fundamental nature, as quantum entanglement research confirms very concretely, is non-locally connected. What's non-locally connected mean? It means connected without having to be touching. Okay? Our fundamental nature is non-local connection with each other. But our worldview is shaped by the differences we assign ourselves in our ideologies. So, what does the way through look like? Well, it doesn't look like a better system of the same nature, right? It's not more technology. It's not a better economic structure. It's not a more refined ideological framework or a more refined religion. The only two ingredients for any idea to come to life are work and knowledge. Without work, you don't get the physical manifestation of an idea. And without knowledge, you don't gain the know-how to bring the idea, as close to how it exists in thought form into physical manifestation. So work and knowledge are the only two ingredients for bringing an idea to life. Pardon me. So not money, that's not required. Not permission, that's not required. Except for ideas that involve, where you try to involve people into, then that'll require permission. But permission is not required for you to go about bringing your ideas to life. That's not required in nature. Okay. The right economic system or the right structure to how your region does politics and hierarchy of man, that's not required. You're not required to have the right system. Right? All you need is work and knowledge. Knowledge and work. Maybe in that order. Knowledge and work. That's all you need. Okay? Knowledge that is lived when holistically gained. Not just mentally held and recited, but practiced into embodiment until it becomes something you are rather than something you know, is the kind of knowledge that brings ideas to these big problems to life. So work and knowledge that that you really hold. Okay, not just that you can repeat and recite and regurgitate, but knowledge that you've paid enough attention to actually gain and practice and master holistically. The way through, to answer my own question, is to cut our losses, count our blessings, and start working from a place that honestly acknowledges our current standing, our current and accurate and correct and true standing to say, we deserve all of these mass distributed technological advancements. We're ready. We're ready to live in a world where we have all of these things because we are advanced enough inwardly that we can steward having everybody in the world or everybody in the US or everybody in, I don't know, New York, possess these technologies. Right? And this is definitely not an argument for government to come in and regulate what we're allowed to touch. That's not what this is. So don't confuse my words. But what I mean is we have to start acknowledging how far behind our moral development is relative, to the tools that we are holding and using and possessing and passing down. Right? We have to be willing to disassemble some of what we have built and to do things with our hands again until we are ready to have the machines do them because we are advanced enough. Right? We have to teach with our example rather than our platforms only. We have to stop acting as if keeping up with the desired pace of the order giver class to produce the technologies is what actually feeds and houses people and restores connection and restores harmony where it may have been messed up. Okay. Technology can indeed show us where we need to get to. And that's not a small gift. It's an enormous gift. It's great. So I'm grateful for technology and technological advancement. I obviously run a podcast. There's no way that I did all of the slow work to be able to master the technical, to be able to build this computer, this camera, microphone, all of these things myself, let alone all the softwares and whatnot. I'm very grateful for the advancement of technology. I still tell the truth about it and about how much we deserve or don't deserve to have it as a human family. So severely disconnected from nature and natural law. The tools, when looked at honestly, reveal a gap rather than filling it. Right? They reveal the gap rather than filling it. The question is whether we are willing to look at the gap and do the actual work of closing it, getting more and more morally advanced ourselves from the inside, from our inward experience and inward environment, how true we are inside our heads with our thoughts, and how coherent we are with our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Do the work of closing that gap from the inside rather than buying another tool and calling that process progress. As you can see, the story that we have been living says that we are, in fact, the advancement, and the technology is just an extension of us. But the truer story is that the technology is way far ahead of us. And we have a lot of moral work to do. We have a lot of self-development work to do. Not shameful work, mind you, not defeatist work, okay? But the most important work there is, the work of becoming. So what story are you going to live? Hey, okay. Sheesh. Well, that was fun. I apologize if at any time, you were watching this and you were wondering, is he okay? What's wrong with this guy today? It's just, it's been a super duper busy day. So scrambling, trying to kind of throw things together. As you can see in my presentation today, there were no overlaps of text and things. But you know, just some episodes are going to be super duper smooth, and I'm just going to be so immersed and involved with um, how I script things out and whatnot, that it's going to sound more like a perfect episode. And some episodes are going to be like this, where it's a little choppy at times, but um, still hopefully gets the message across. Please, good people, like the video. Please subscribe to the channels. I do have the ambition to one day monetize this podcast, and I can't do that, at least not on YouTube, if you don't like the video and subscribe to the channels and comment. Comment something you learned, something that you are thinking about. Make your comment at least 6 words, please, for the algorithm and for me, because you love me so much, obviously, and I love you too. And yeah, man, today is indeed Wednesday, I believe. And so I will see you tomorrow for the next one. Peace and love.